Okay, welcome everyone. This is Planting with Purpose Garden Pests. And I'm Patty Catalano, Ag Program Coordinator at CCE Madison. Me and Tess Southern are part of the Ag team at Madison County. And today we're going to talk about all the different bugs that bug you in your vegetable garden. We can't, of course, cover all of them because there's quite a few. And let's go on ahead. So today's topics, a brief outline, why do we want to identify our pests, an introduction to IPM, which stands for Integrated Pest Management. Then we're going to talk about the bad ones, then the good ones, methods of control, and the methods include environmental, biological, chemical, and mechanical. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at Patricia May, PATRICIAMAE @cornell.edu. So why do we want to identify our pests? Basically, we should all practice responsible husbandry when it comes to the animal and plant life in our garden. So identifying our pests helps us to know what to do about them and whether or not they really are a problem, if they really are a pest, and also how to go about taking care of them or getting rid of them if need be. If you just kill everything in your garden, you know, bugs and insects, everything that you see, you'll find that it has an effect on plants that you grow and even the soil and stuff like that. So husbandry basically means educating yourself a little bit about what's in your garden and taking as best care of it as you possibly can. So let's start with bad ones. So again, I can't cover all the bad bugs. There's a lot of bad bugs out there, but there's also a lot of good ones. So we're going to cover some of the ones that are pretty common. And if you have anything in your garden and you don't know what it is, please feel free to email me a picture and I can try to identify it or hand it off to somebody who can. So the picture on the left there is an aphid. Aphids are a very small little soft-bodied insect. They feed on new growth. They have sucking mouth parts. They make honeydew and they multiply asexually in addition to sexually. So they actually multiply a couple different ways. So they feed on the new growth, which means they're usually found at the very tips of plants. And they insert their proboscis into the plant and suck out all the sweet juices, which is why they're damaging to plants, because the sweet juices inside the plant, that's what the plant uses to feed itself too. So you don't want them. And aphids are funny, like they're not there 1 minute and the next minute you've got a pretty good sized infestation. So they often are the same color as the leaves or the stems of the plant they're feeding on. So sometimes they can be kind of hard to spot, especially on trees or larger things. They make honeydew, which is a really nice word for poop. As they're sucking out the juices of the plants, they poop it out as well. And that honeydew covers the stems and the leaves of the plant. And sometimes a way you can tell that they're there is there are ants crawling around because they're attracted to that sweet honeydew. And then again, they multiply asexually, so they kind of just spit babies out, which is why they go from just a handful of them to so many so quickly. They're very opportunistic as well. So you often see them when you've neglected watering. If something's stressed out, one of your plants is stressed out and you haven't watered it enough, you'll often see aphids. And if you water it too much so that it's drowning, too much water will also bring on an aphid infestation. So that's aphids in a nutshell. And we're going to go again over control methods later. So also caterpillars, there are several different caterpillars that feed on your plants. Caterpillars of all kinds, so they feed on just about anything. They have chewing mouth parts, so you usually see the damage on the leaves of your plants. They leave frass behind. Frass is another pretty name for poop. I'm not sure why entomologists can't just say poop, but that's what frass is if you see that word. And caterpillars, of course, come in all shapes and sizes. This one is a big tomato hornworm. Got that horn there on the end. You can see where the name came from. And the host is the tomato plant. So it's pretty easy about the name. These guys will defoliate your tomato plants very quickly if you don't catch them when they're young. But they're not easy, or they're not hard to get rid of. You just pluck them off and squish them, or feed them to your chickens, because chickens love caterpillars like this. And they do leave a lot of dark green frass behind. So frass looks kind of like little pebbles. And depending on what the caterpillar feeds on, that will determine what the color of the frass is. So that's caterpillars. Those are one of the harder things to identify, and because there's so many of them, like I said. Let's see, hard-bodied feeders. So these are things that have an exoskeleton. Sometimes they're a little harder to kill because that exoskeleton protects them. And the picture you see right there is a striped cucumber beetle. We definitely have those in our area. Beetles can have chewing or sucking mouth parts. Not both, it's either or. So they either chew on the leaves or they suck on the juices in the leaves. Then they leave frass behind as well, often. They come in all shapes and sizes as well. You'll see some other pictures in a little bit of some caterpillars. Okay, so moving forward. So some more detail about some caterpillars that we have in our area. There's the tomato hornworm up at the top of the screen. We talked in good length about him. Cabbage loopers are just to the left there, and if you notice, they're about the exact same color as the cabbage leaf. So they're pretty hard to spot when they're small. When you start noticing that your cabbages are looking like Swiss cheese and you see that dark green frass, then you know you have cabbage loopers. So a lot of times the best thing to do for those is just go pick them off and squish them. They don't get real big, not as big as the tomato hornworm. And they get there from the cabbage butterfly. It's a white butterfly, you've seen it probably. And if you watch one when they're near a patch of cabbage or other brassica family crops, so cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that, you can watch the butterfly land on the cabbages and such and lay an egg. And I've actually followed one and then smushed the eggs afterwards. get a real jump on things. Okay, bottom left corner is the asparagus beetle. That's the larva. Some of these pests, they feed in multiple stages. So this one, the caterpillar will feed on the asparagus, but also the beetle will feed on it some. So that's the larva in the bottom left-hand corner. And oftentimes you don't notice these because they're very small until your asparagus starts to look pretty badly. And one of the biggest things about getting rid of those is to clean up at the end of every asparagus season, once you've cut your patch down, to just burn all of the debris from it. So then we have the Mexican bean beetle larva. That's in the middle, and that's the entire life cycle. You can see the little yellow eggs there on the right of the picture hatching out to the small little larva and then pupating into the beetle. And this is another one where both stages will feed on your bean plants. They prefer bush beans, so if you grow pole beans, you're less likely to see them. And we really haven't seen these in our area. they can occur. They're in our county and everything, but we personally on our farm have not seen them. The next picture is the squash vine borer. We have seen these, and the moths that the moth that you see in front of you is the thing that you're most likely to see, because the larvae are very small, and the moth will lay an egg on the underside of a zucchini or other, mostly on our farm, they've been worse on the summer squash. So zucchinis, things like that. They don't happen as frequently on our winter squash, but they will be a pest on both. So that's just our personal experience. But what they do is they lay an egg on the underside of the vine, and the egg hatches out and to a larva, and the larva burrows into your stem of the vine and just starts tunneling all the way down the vine until it's through its life cycle. And then it burrows out, pupates in the pupa, which is the step in between the larva or the caterpillar looking thing and the actual adult. So that moth there is the adult. And the pupa will overwinter in the soil and then hatch out as this adult in about, I think, in the month of June around our area. So when you grow squashes, if you notice that your plants are wilting and you don't know why, and you've watered it, and in the heat of the day it just kind of starts to look really cruddy, it's probably a squash vine borer, because since they burrow through the vine, they're eating all of the cells that the plant needs to transport food and water to and from the ground and to itself. So it's really disrupting all of that. So that's why your squash plants will start to wilt, and you really can't figure out why if the soil is nice and moist and stuff like that. So if you notice that it is wilting very badly, and if it eventually dies and you pull it out, you'll see the spot where the borer bored into the vine, and it leaves kind of bright orange frass at the hole where the borer went in. Then we have cabbage maggot. This is not something I've really seen much of, but I know that some people have, and we do have it in our area. It's a very tiny little larva that feeds on the roots and the crowns sometimes of cabbages. And in that picture, you see this is the adult. It is a fly, and this is the pupa, and this is the maggot that will actually burrow around and feed on your cabbages. So not a good guy. Cabbage maggot is a good reason to rotate your crops. Okay, so hard-bodied feeders in more detail, beetles and bugs. We're going to go into these a little bit. So some things that you may see in your garden are asparagus beetles, which we already talked about. We talked about the larva mostly. Cucumber beetles, which are the pictures on the left. Now you notice that they're the same color, but their patterns are different. So you may have either one of these, or you may have both. I've seen both in some years. So there's the spotted cucumber beetle and the striped cucumber beetle. They're not very big. I think they're maybe like 1/4 of an inch or so, but they're very fast unless you go out early in the morning and squash them. That has been the best thing I have found to take care of them, because they're beetles. So once you get cucumbers and other squash that they feed on past the seedling stage, once they really start, settling in and getting bigger, they can tolerate some of the feeding that these beetles will do. But when they're young, the cucumbers, when they first come up, that's the most important time to go out there early in the morning, squash the beetles, and give your cucumbers a break from their abuse. And then once that's over, you don't have to keep up with it so much. Sometimes I do, because don't like them on my cucumbers too much. Plus, if they have a really big year, then these beetles can actually eat into your fruit as well. So they'll eat the zucchini and kind of make them pretty ugly looking. And especially in winter squash, it's important not to break the skin, because then your pumpkins won't last as long in storage. So if they have a really big year, you might want to step it up and keep after them most of the season. Okay, bottom left corner, we have flea beetles. And flea beetles are tiny. They're about the size of a flea, probably a little bit bigger, really. And they jump just like a flea does, so hence the name. But they're a beetle, and they will stipple the leaves of your plants. And again, they prefer cole crops, so they'll eat on rupini and kale, mustard greens, things like that. But they will also eat on eggplant, which is not a cole crop or a brassica family. That's a solanaceous plant. Eggplant and tomatoes are actually relatives. So the thing to do about these is often to spray, because they're so tiny and they're so numerous. And we'll go into what works with them later. The picture on the bottom right you can see is a very heavily damaged plant in the cole family, cole crop. So then we have the Mexican bean beetles, which we already talked about. You saw the larva and the beetle in the last slide. And then the brown marmorated stink bug. I haven't really personally seen many of these around here, but they are a problem in some areas. And what these guys do is they have a long proboscis. They stick it into an apple, and they can also feed on tomatoes. And when they stick the proboscis in, it makes a bruise that is kind of tasteless, and the fruit loses its color. So you can still eat the fruit, but if you're selling anything, it's not good for salability of your fruit and vegetables. So that one is a problem, and it is a stink bug, and it is a true bug. So not all bugs are bugs. A bug is actually a technical term in the world of entomology. So this is a true bug. All right, so let's move on. I'm not sure what happened to this slide. Formatting got off, but other pests in our gardens: woodchucks, rabbits, deer, and cats. On the resources slide at the end of the presentation, there's some good resources on woodchucks and deer. And at our place, you know, we have a couple dogs, and they keep a lot of these critters at bay. But also, we seem to have discovered from doing a little research that woodchucks don't like it when you mark your territory. So we read about using urine as a way to keep woodchucks away, and that has actually helped in some cases. We've also used netting over some crops, because most animals, you know, they're eating your garden not because they don't have other things to eat, but because what you're growing tastes better and it's easy to get to. So if you make things harder to get to with like some kind of barrier, like netting or something like that, low fences for woodchucks, rabbits, and cats anyway. Deer are a little harder because, of course, they can jump over things, pretty tall things, and they can be kind of determined. So I won't go into a lot more than that with these guys because they are a problem. But like I said, the resources at the end, there's a lot of good suggestions out there on what to do about them. But they are definitely pests. Okay, now we're going to go into the good guys, the good ones. So good bugs in your garden sometimes look a lot like the bad bugs. So this is another reason why you want to identify what you have. picture on the left is a bunch of different kinds of assassin bugs. Assassin bugs are, well, they go about eating just about any soft-bodied insect that they can find. So they'll eat aphids and maybe even caterpillars and things like that. But they eat them by sparing them with their proboscis and sucking out all their juices, which is gruesome, but it's good for your garden. And there's a lot of different kinds of them, like in the picture. They will poke their proboscis at you too, so don't handle them. And if you can avoid it, you know, try not to kill them because they're doing you a favor. But they all have kind of this, there's a shape that they have that's similar, if you can kind of see that. So they all have this elongated form of body, and they have rather long legs. And the head doesn't have a whole lot of variation. Their eyes are on the side and kind of bulging. Okay, so lots of different assassin bugs out there, and they are good. Then over to the right of that, we have a, let's go up here. We have the lady beetle. Now, most of you know the picture of the lady beetle that has several spots on its back. That's what everybody's used to seeing, and it's red with black spots. Well, there are several different kinds of lady beetles. This one is actually a two-spotted ladybug, and they're very common around here, but they're much smaller than those orange ladybugs that are actually, I think they're Chinese. The orange ladybugs are an invasive from China. We do have native real ladybugs that are red with black spots, but we also have these two-spotted ladybugs, and they have a larva. Here's one of the larvae on the right, and here's another one. So there are obviously two different kinds of ladybugs. So like I said, there are several. The larva will eat something like 500 aphids in a day or more, depending on the species, I'm sure. So these larvae look kind of scary, and it would be really easy to just swat them and squash them. But if you see them, try not to. And I do often see them, actually. And the ladybug herself, or himself, I suppose, will also eat soft-bodied aphids and things like that. So if you see those in your garden, don't squash them. Try not to spray them, because a lot of sprays and things they're not selective. They're going to kill the good guys and the bad guys. So then we have spined soldier bug. That's the one down here with the white background. He has spines on his shoulders. He's a true bug, and he will eat other bugs, bad ones, caterpillars and stuff like that. He does the same kind of thing these assassin bugs do. He puts his proboscis in and sucks out the juices of the bug. I put him next to the brown marmorated stink bug because they look so similar, but if you'll notice, the brown marmorated stink bug doesn't have the spines on the shoulders, and the spined soldier bug doesn't have what's called the marmoration. So the white and brown coloring here on the edges is not there on the spined soldier bug. So that's a couple of good ways to tell them apart. So there's some of the good guys, good ones. I'm going to have another slide or two about good ones. To the left, these are green lacewings. Green lacewings are maybe about a ½ an inch long. They fly rather lazily and not very skillfully around. And the adult there will eat aphids and other pests, but also their larva, which is this nasty looking thing right here, is called an Aphid Lion. And right there, it's actually eating aphids. It will eat, I can't remember how many, but it's almost up to 700, 800 aphids a day, or not a day, sorry, until it's through its cycle and becomes an adult. So if you see one of these, don't squash it. And also if you see eggs on a string, this is lacewing eggs. So don't do anything to those, leave them alone because they're good bugs. Then we have, of course, the praying mantis. They're very common and easy to spot. But what's not common, or at least not easy to spot, are their egg cases. I've seen a lot of people wondering what these are. They look like a little bit of brown styrofoam on a stick. And they're actually, it's a layered bunch with thousands of eggs for a praying mantis in there. So you can trim that off, prune off the branch, put it in a jar with some holes in it, and watch them hatch out, and then put them where you want them. And they can, the little babies are very small when they come out, and they will go to town eating all sorts of insects. But praying mantis, they will also eat other bugs. I've seen them eating butterflies and things like that. So even though the temptation might be to stop them from doing that, remember that they also eat a lot of the bad bugs too. So, and then upper right hand corner, we have these at our farm. First time I saw them, I think I might have squished one because they're rather large. It's a ground beetle, but they're very pretty. They have this purple coloring along the sides. And I've seen other ground beetles with different coloring as well. We have the purple ones at our farm, but they eat slug eggs. So don't squash them. I've never been bitten by one or anything, but I mean, they may have that capability because they are a beetle. They probably have chewing mouth parts. So I wouldn't pick one up without gloves on, but mostly they eat slug eggs and other insects. So that's a good thing, especially since we have a lot of slugs around here. Some of the more horrific beneficials, but they do a wonderful job at their job, are parasitic wasps. These guys you'll rarely see. They're very small. They buzz around very quickly. Once in a while, I'll get one caught on the screen of our house, and I'll let him go because I know what he is. And they're tiny little wasps, and what they do is they lay their eggs inside pests. So this is a tiny little aphid, and what he's doing is laying eggs on the, not inside, sorry, laying eggs on the aphid. And once the egg hatches out, it will eat the aphid and then do its whole life cycle that way. So some of them do lay their eggs inside. I've seen pictures of that. And the larvae hatch inside and then eat their way out. The picture on the right is a tomato hornworm, like we saw earlier. And all those little white things are parasitic wasp eggs. And I have seen this in person before. So if you see one of those worms covered with those white eggs, don't kill it. Let the parasitic wasps do their thing, hatch out, eat that hornworm, and then you're going to have a lot more of those wasps in your area. So that's a good thing. Okay, so I'm recording this separately. We did do a poll. I believe this particular poll is expired now, so we're just going to move along.